Today we're going to look at how to upload a CSV file to Colab. So to start with, Colab does not have enough built-in functions to let us do what we need to do. So we need to import a library that has extra functions that will let us manipulate a spreadsheet. So to start, I am going to import, help if I spell import correctly, the pandas library, and I am going to abbreviate it as PD. So the pandas library lets us do a lot of spreadsheet manipulation. So this imports the pandas library, abbreviated PD. So I don't have to type the word pandas every time, I can just type PD. Then I need to upload my CSV file. A CSV file, CSV stands for comma separated values. It's just a slightly different format of a spreadsheet. You can take an Excel file or a Google Sheets file and download it as a CSV. You can download a CSV file from a lot of websites that have data sets, and they're just a more universal file type. So we're going to start, click on the little folder, and then you can either click this upload button or you can drag your file and drop it here. So I have a file that is called fish. It is a data of a bunch of fish that have been caught. So you will frequently get this warning that pops up. All it says is that the file that you upload is not going to live in Colab forever. So you need to make sure that that's saved somewhere else, because after a day or so, it will delete that CSV file from Colab. Your code is not ruined, you just have to re-upload the data set. So don't worry about this warning, click OK. The next thing we have to do is actually load our data set into the program. So you need to pick a variable that represents your data set. I'm just going to call this data set fish. Then I need to go into the pandas library and get a function. And the function that I need is read underscore CSV. Now, in the parentheses, I need to tell it what CSV file to look at. So I'm going to come over here to my fish data set, click the three dots, copy path, and then inside single quotes, I'm going to paste that path. Okay, that's all I need for that. I can go ahead and close this tab now. So what this line of code is doing is importing the fish data set and calling the entire set fish. If you want to go ahead and run that code to make sure that everything works correctly, you can. Now, unlike Google Sheets, there is not a spreadsheet here for us to look at. So we can use some other functions to get an idea of what our data set looks like. First thing that you might want to do is wonder how many rows are in your data set. So we can do the len function, which stands for like length of fish. This will give us the number of rows in the data set. And if I go ahead and run that, it says there are 159 rows in the data set. Okay, cool. But that's still not a lot of information about my data set. So the other thing that is helpful, you can do fish.head, and then inside parentheses, put a small number. I'm going to go with 5. This will give me the column headings and the first 5 rows of my data set so I can see what it looks like. I don't need to look at all 159 rows. This gives me a good idea of what I'm looking at. So this gives me the column titles and the first 5 rows. You can change the number in the parentheses and see more or fewer rows. Looking here, a couple of things that you might notice. One, it starts counting the rows at row 0, not at row 1. So that's a little bit different than what you might be used to in spreadsheets. The other thing you might notice here is that this says NaN. That stands for not a number. In this case, it is a blank value in the spreadsheet. We know that when we try to do calculations, blanks can cause issues. So I'm going to go ahead and delete every row that has a blank value. So to do that, I'm going to say fish equals, because I want it to just override my data set, fish dot drop NA. So this will remove all rows with a blank. Now, how many rows is it going to remove? Well, might be helpful to do len again. Okay, so now I have 150 rows. So there were 9 rows that contained blanks. Those are all gone. The last thing I'm going to show you in this video is how to take a specific column and do math or make a graph with that column. We need to pull that column out of the data set as a whole. So again, if you need to go back to fish.head to see, again, what are my column names, I want to look at the weight column. So if I want to do some math or make some graphs with the weight of these fish, then I can create a new variable, weight, and tell it I need to go inside the fish data set and then square bracket. You can click here for which column you want, or you can type it in, but you need to make sure that what you type inside the quotes in the square brackets exactly matches the title of the column. So I cannot use weight with a lowercase w here because that's not the same thing. It needs to be capital W. If there are underscores or numbers or anything, those have to be identical as well. So this line of code assigns the weight column to the variable weight. I can go ahead and run that. Last thing for today, if I click on this little X button over here on the left, it will give me a list of all of the variables and tell me what type of variable it is. So right here, I only have 2 variables. I have fish, which is my data set or my data frame, and it tells me that it has 150 rows and 7 columns. And then I have the weight variable, which is a series or a list that has 150 values. So that's it for today. That's the basics of how to import a CSV file and get basic information about that data set.